DC live-action movies, underrated and hated by hypocritical, contradictory, manipulative, CNN-esque, shallow-minded critics. Deep-brained juggernauts that give tons of thought-provoking content. Way more than Marvel on average when looking at the MCU specifically. But even when DC doesn't give a super deep-brained movie, and they aim for more of a popcorn flick instead, they're not any worse for the most part. In this video, we'll be going through the few DC movies that are pretty much Marvel movies. A lot of you probably know what I mean by that, but let me clarify that along with the rules. The typical Marvel movie, despite some exceptions I'll name later, is usually safe, cookie-cutter popcorn flicks with tons of cornball humor that doesn't cover much of a deep, significant subject matter of any sort in tandem with stupid, progressive, social politics at times. And sometimes they try to pretend they're doing something deep.
You have to stop calling them terrorists.
Not to say that a few of these things automatically makes a film bad all the time, hence why there isn't much MCU projects I'd rate under 5, but it's not my cup of tea most of the time. Especially since I'm 22 instead of 12 when the first Avengers came out. I'll start with the DCEU. Any DC films prior to Man of Steel probably don't fit the category anyway. Not the Keaton movies, probably not even the 2 iffy Batman films after Batman Returns. Maybe Green Lantern. But anyway, let's get into it, in order of release, speeding through the ones that clearly aren't. Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman clearly aren't. People may have problems with these films, but chances are they just copy and pasted their opinion off of some dumbass YouTuber. Even if you don't like these films, they clearly aren't one of the dumb Marvel ones. Check out these videos if you want more of my elaboration on Snyder films. The original Suicide Squad is in a weird spot. For the most part, I'd say no, despite it being close to it in ways due to some WB butchering that they probably did in response to the high-thinking, bandwagoning BVS was getting. The classic deep dynamic of Harley Quinn and Joker alone in a few great scenes saves this, despite the non-Ayer cut butchering it by appeasing to feminism and not having a villain be abusive like he's supposed to be, as we know for a fact given Ayer's vision that was even shown in a few leaked clips.
The shit that I do for you. We're gonna talk.
Okay.
Also, the cornball humor doesn't seem quite as corny as a Marvel movie. Like, take this joke within the Harley Quinn footage I'm displaying right now as a huge example. You'll never see that in a Marvel movie. But yeah, WB butchering makes it closer than it should be though.
Oh, relax.
The first Wonder Woman is essentially a Snyder film, so therefore it isn't. A deep topic on the concept of war going off of rough memory. I hear interferences happened with the ending. I haven't looked into it that much, but regardless, it's not in that category, especially if we compare her to other female superhero lead movies on the Marvel end, where they're essentially complete junk. Even overrated as hell even before her movie Black Widow. She-Hulk might jokingly be a debate, ironically, for all of the wrong reasons. Check out my hilarious unorthodox deep video on that. It's hilarious that every other live-action female lead superhero film sucks ass except for Wonder Woman's. It's great on its own merits, but it has zero competition, and even most general critics would agree given that I haven't heard as much positive words on the others. I don't know, man, funny how it's the one that's written by Snyder. Makes you think, you dumb drones.
Okay.
Now we're actually getting into them. It's time to start Scooby-Dooing this crap. This one shouldn't count, but the 2017 Whedon cut of Justice League. They basically took out like 75% of the movie and replaced it with junk and cornball humor, along with removing brutality and deeper storylines with characters like Cyborg and Flash. I guess this makes sense given that this guy directed Avengers movies, but I'm glad he's gone. I like DC the way it is. Deep as hell most of the time. The reaction to this movie being bad is funny. Everyone subconsciously expects more from DC when it comes to deep stuff. Or they're just biased. If this was released as an MCU Avengers film, then it wouldn't have been panned as badly. It would have fit right in with their usual quality. Aquaman. Now this one is weird, as I thought it was one of them before going into it, but I'd say it is, but sorta not. I think it barely slips out of it as it isn't as nothing significant level as most MCU movies, no woke politics. I can't even really call it a cookie cutter movie since we have never gotten an underwater superhero action movie in live action. Not counting ghetto ass Namor, who we got like 4 years later. It brought something new to the table on top of the action being above most Marvel movies. I may find it a little better than the plot it's similar to Black Panther. I found the protagonist to be more human, funny enough, along with a better romance arc with his parents. Also, how the hell did this lose visual effects to Black Panther? Woke Disney Marvel pandering, I suppose. Oscars or most awards are a bought and paid buys joke.
Oh, that's hot. Oh, wow. That's hot.
Now, Shazam is definitely a Marvel movie. All the reasons that I gave for Aquaman slipping out of the category, Shazam does not have. The action isn't that great, especially for a character of that power level. They sorta nerf him for the sake of humor. A fall from this height would not hurt him, hell, it would barely even hurt Batman. With examples like that, it also has around the same level of cornball humor as most Marvel movies. I guess it's partially justified since Shazam is a kid, but still. The only good significant thread is his mother dynamic along with the plot twist of it, which is something at least. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't bad or anything as said near the start, but despite it still being Marvel, I'd still put it over a good chunk of them such as Captain Marvel, Widow, and Ant-Man, etc. I'll use my supreme intelligence to guess that the sequel will turn out the same.
But I've seen all of the Fast and the Furious movies, lady. It's all about
Family! Family! Guys, that was a signal!
Is Joker a Marvel movie? Okay. As legendary as the film is, it might not even be a DC movie given their extreme down-to-earth tone. Next film, for real this time. Apart from being rated R, Birds of Prey is definitely a Marvel movie. As a matter of fact, my down bad thumbnail may have lied to you, as this one may be worse than most Marvel movies. Maybe it isn't as bad or worse than Widow or Captain, but I'd have to go through a lot of pain for that full comparison. I didn't entertain fully watching this as I've seen enough. Feminism with it claiming Harley Quinn was the brains to all of Joker's operations. Stupid pride pandering with making Zaz and a giga tough mafia boss like Black Mask gay. A weird race swap with Black Canary. Not that I'm always against race swaps, but I think that's sorta really tied to the iconic look of Black Canary. I mean, like, the same Black Canary actress could have just played Huntress instead.
Besides the fart,
You just a nasty nigga, bro.
I'm not going any further down the rabbit hole on this one. It's too obviously undebatable. Only saving grace is maybe music. To sum this film up into a clip,
Gay.
Wonder Woman 1984, a 35%ish downgrade from the first Wonder Woman, which therefore sort of proves that Zack Snyder shadow directed the first movie. Even though it doesn't cover anything as deep as BVS or Man of Steel, I find it at least touches a story of sacrificing wishes and even love for a greater good, so therefore I'm still putting it slightly above a few other Marvel movies like Widow and Captain Marvel, despite not being as good as the first. Now, I know I may get tomatoes thrown at me given that this film got a lot of flack, but I didn't think it was too awful or as riddled with as much cornball jokes within a Marvel movie most importantly, despite having a similar cheese tone to Batman Forever. But that's still not really Marvel or a horrible sin on its own merits. I think it's just a decent, slightly above average superhero flick. Sorta Marvel, but sorta not, cause other Marvel movies fall more flat on their face with deep messages, or they just don't try to give anything at all. I don't know, critics are always over-exaggerating the meaning of bad when it comes to something that's just average or slightly above it. This is why you shouldn't listen to them, form your own opinion. But anyway, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah, this isn't a discussion, although I don't find it as deep as BVS. It's definitely not Marvel though, the increased brutality alone on top of many other points like no cornball humor or the stuff the Whedon cut took out as mentioned before. The Suicide Squad. I'm ready for the tomatoes to be thrown at me even more for this, but it's a Marvel movie. Makes sense given, you know, he's a literal director of Marvel movies, but yeah, cookie cutters under the context of them weirdly reusing Deadshot. Harley isn't as interesting as the last Squad movie, and Peacemaker, going off of just the movie and not the show I haven't touched, is one of the most overrated characters I've seen ever. Killing people for peace is the very concept of a soldier. I guess he may have more consciousness about it over some soldiers that go into it because they see no other path in life, but that's not every soldier. A large percentage of them fight for peace. He just narrates it to the audience so we get the so-called deep stuff with no subtlety. Go watch Punisher instead, for crying out loud. King Shark just wants friends. Polka Dot Man might have some unique trauma to work with, but that ends to a forgettable goofball villain, just like a Marvel movie. I don't care that Peacemaker or Starro may be like a book you probably didn't even read. Shove the book and the entire pride flag displaying comic book shop up your ass. Oh right, and cornball humor like a Marvel movie. It's only hidden by it being a rated R vulgar version, like that Beach of Dicks crap, which is less funny than the micro-brain crap I pull ironically in the Xbox parties.
You're the leader. You're supposed to be decisive.
And I've decided that you should eat a big bag of dicks. How's that?
If this whole beach was completely covered in dicks, and somebody said I'd eat every dick until the beach was clean for liberty, I would say no problemo.
Why would someone put penises all over the beach?
Who knows why madmen do what they do?
Yeah, that's not funny. That's not the kind of humor we do on this show.
Hell, there's a decent amount of shit posts that are way funnier than that. I'd rather listen to someone say the N-word for the 82nd time than whatever that was supposed to be. It may be able to get a slight chuckle at generous best due to how bad the attempt at humor was, but if you genuinely found that funny, then you're mentally 12. A tier below the autistic 9-year-old throwing his lunch at the wall. I know I may sound over negative on this film, but it isn't bad, but it's beyond me how this was called a masterpiece by people. Don't even lie to yourself and say it was better than the first just because a bunch of YouTubers told you so. It left far less cultural impact than the last, where it sold a shit ton of Harley Quinn and Leto costumes. I guess the looks of most people who hold it to such a high standard says enough. Okay, time for some more tomatoes again, sorta. Gosh, I'm gonna lose so much people due to this. The Batman isn't a Marvel movie, mostly due to no cornball jokes. I don't think it covers too much of a deep, significant subject matter though. A little more than a few Marvel movies, but not on the level of The Dark Knight, Joker, or BVS. It sort of is a Marvel movie, but no cornball keeps it out of that bottom tier Marvel category. Although I could think of a few Marvel films that beat it. Bite me, I guess. If you want more of my details on that film, check out my review that may piss off some drones. Okay, last one, and luckily we're ending on a more positive note. Black Adam. It slips out of the category similar to Aquaman, if not a little more. The action is so top notch that only Snyder is on par with it. It's over most Marvel movies. Now, a lot of people claim this shit is just action, but if you look under the surface and dig, you'll find something. Like a bunch of Western heroes being sent to an underdeveloped country by a powerful government and its world elites only when they actually have a superpowered being to work with, or a struggle with revenge, etc. It's no BVS, Dark Knight, or Joker, but still, I guess people only dig stories as being deep when they give minor, non-deep themes in a blunt, spoon-fed way like narrating directly to the audience. Whatever. Drones. It has a few Marvel points, but nothing that tips it over enough. Atom Smasher feels straight out of a Marvel movie, but not in a way that over-intrudes on the story, unlike what Marvel does most of the time, where a character like that is the star of the whole movie. Sure, the villain is fairly forgettable like a Marvel movie, but it gets remedied by focusing on the internal struggles of Black Adam, along with his conflict with other heroes like Hawkman. I guess he loses a bit of lore accuracy along with a few other characters similar to Marvel, but not as bad as the various Marvel examples. I played Black Adam in Multiverses before seeing the movie and got cool badass lines like this.
Is it arrogance if you are right?
So I was slightly disappointed that he wasn't portrayed as usual going off of that along with the Return of Black Adam animated movie, Injustice and its comics, but despite the fact that he's not a villain, I'm not going to deduct any points just for comic accuracy though, since it works on its own merits. Unlike a bunch of other dumb shallow critics who pick and choose when it matters by drastic hypocritical degrees. Video on that topic by the way. But yeah, that's all of them. As a recap, it's basically Whedon's 2017 Justice League, sorta Aquaman but not really, it slips out, Shazam and assumably its sequel, Birds of Prey despite some edge, Wonder Woman 1984 but not really, it sorta slips out but mostly in comparison to other female lead superhero movies on the Marvel end, and the Suicide Squad. Bear in mind I'm just going off of live action movies, I'm sure most of the CW goes into that category as well. Meanwhile with Marvel, it's so much that I skip a bunch of them along with their popcorn flicks just being worse most of the time. I don't care enough to make it its own video, so I'm gonna half-assingly jam my list of MCU movies that aren't the typical dumb Marvel movies. There isn't much. 2008's Hulk, which is technically a Universal Studios film, and maybe a few other early MCU films like the Captain America trilogy, the story of Thanos within Infinity War, but that's it. And even then I wouldn't call most of them higher tier DC films like BVS, Joker, or The Dark Knight. When I say Marvel, I'm mostly talking MCU Marvel. Other companies like Sony and Fox who make Marvel movies do not have this issue nearly at all, with stuff like the Raimi movies and even the Amazing Spider-Man movies. The Venom movies are sorta MCU though. The X-Men movies aren't, not even X-Men Origins, with the only exceptions maybe being Dark Fate. Deadpool slips out of it, and then there's Netflix with Daredevil and Punisher, which needs no explaining. Like even Michael Bay movies like Transformers and Ninja Turtles own their lack of a super deep plot by compensating with greater action and hell. They're even funnier. But yeah, The Spy sucks ass to see, but whatever. People have to drone, people have to hide, and wait for a reviewer to tell them what's right with their little cuck moist meters, and the bottom tier CNN of YouTube objectively lying cosmonaut. Don't hit me with movie sales as if it's a be or end all. Marvel sells more, so therefore, Captain Marvel is better than the Dark Knight. Go pick dimes off the floor, you filthy. Time to end the rambling as I could keep endlessly naming better superhero movies. Point is, I just hate Disney Marvel's oversaturation of dumb movies in the superhero genre. It doesn't help the case of people calling superhero movies dumb, samey, and unthought-provoking carnival rides due to the MCU taking up most of the spotlight because they appealed to the majority unconscious individual, as opposed to DC that has a few flick movies that are at least more counterbalanced with a solid amount of deep gems. But that's about it for real this time, as I probably pissed everyone off with this video as I tore into their hives and biases that they copied from YouTubers, but whatever, if you're sub then you're goat. Check out other videos of mine as they expand upon a lot of what I've said in this video, such as my Batman review and Snyder Batman defense, my outdated Punisher video, comic accuracy, double standards, and my extremely unique She-Hulk breakdown. But yeah, thanks for watching.